In the quiet of night, a chilling act unfolds on the outskirts of a sleepy town. Beneath the moonlit sky, a farm adjacent to sprawling woods becomes the stage for a harrowing discovery. A local farmer, intent on a late-night check on his crops, stumbles upon a scene that would haunt him for years to come. What lies buried just a few feet deep in the soft earth is not just a body, but the shattered remains of a decade-long marriage, a family torn apart by deception, and a man's life unraveled by the ultimate betrayal. This isn't just a story of murder, it's a heart-wrenching saga of trust broken and lives altered forever. Tonight, we delve into the tragic tale of Jamal Richardson, the dedicated detective whose life spirals out of control when he uncovers the truth about his wife, Lila, and his trusted colleague, Marcus. Join us as we explore how deeply betrayal can cut and how far one man will go when the foundation of his world crumbles beneath him. Jamal Richardson, a detective renowned for his keen instincts and unwavering dedication, had swiftly climbed the ranks of the city's police force. A man of honor and integrity, Jamal had always been deeply committed to justice, often putting his life on the line to safeguard his community. His colleagues respected him for his sharp analytical skills and his ability to remain calm under pressure. But Jamal's world wasn't just about solving crimes. It was also filled with profound personal joy, marked by his marriage to Lila Green. Lila, a vibrant and compassionate schoolteacher, had met Jamal during a community outreach program. Her warmth and the genuine kindness she radiated complemented Jamal's more reserved nature perfectly. They fell in love amidst community picnics and quiet evenings spent discussing their dreams and aspirations. Their wedding, a blend of traditional and contemporary, was a festive celebration of their union, attended by friends, family, and the entire precinct where Jamal worked. Life seemed promising, filled with love and shared goals. Lila was not just Jamal's wife, but his confidant, his soft place to fall after grueling cases. However, their fairy tale start was marred by a twist of fate when, 10 years into their marriage, Lila suffered a catastrophic accident. A drunk driver collided with her car on her way home from school, leaving her with irreversible spinal cord injuries and loss of vision. Her world, once filled with the laughter of children and the joy of teaching, shrunk down to the confines of their home, where Jamal took on the new role of caretaker. The vibrant, independent woman he had married was now dependent on him for the simplest of tasks. This tragic turn drastically changed the dynamics of their relationship, but Jamal's commitment to Lila never wavered. He resigned from his demanding job to provide full-time care, proving his devotion and love in the face of adversity. Parallel to Jamal's story of dedication and tragedy was Marcus Wells, Jamal's colleague and best friend. Marcus, too, was a detective, known for his charismatic personality and persuasive abilities. He was the life of the precinct, always ready with a story or a joke to lighten the heavy load of their daily duties. What few knew, however, was the double life Marcus led. Behind his charming facade lay a restless spirit driven by desires that bordered on reckless. Marcus thrived on the thrill of the chase, not just in his professional life but also in his personal dealings. His motivations were complex, entangled with a need for validation and conquest, which often led him to cross lines that were not only professional but deeply personal. The bond between Jamal and Marcus had been forged in the intensity of their police academy days and had seemed unbreakable. They had been partners on numerous high-stakes cases, their skills complementing each other perfectly. Marcus had been Jamal's best man at his wedding, and he knew all the intimate details of Jamal's life with Lila. Unbeknownst to Jamal, however, Marcus's visits to his home during his absence were not just about checking in on Lila out of concern. As Jamal was often away for work, especially in the early years when he was trying to establish his career, Marcus found himself drawn to Lila in a way that started innocently but soon spiraled into a clandestine affair. This betrayal was not a sudden impulse but a gradual erosion of boundaries, fueled by loneliness on Lila's part and opportunism on Marcus's. Jamal Richardson's career was flourishing, but its demands took him away from home frequently. Often stationed on assignments that stretched over weeks, Jamal's presence in his own home became sporadic, a fleeting comfort to Lila, who longed for companionship and normalcy after her life-altering accident. During these long periods of solitude, Lila found herself increasingly reliant on the visits of Marcus Wells, Jamal's best friend and colleague, who had promised to look in on her in Jamal's absence. At first, Marcus's visits were purely out of concern and a sense of duty to his friend. He would stop by to ensure Lila had everything she needed, but these check-ins soon turned into regular encounters, filled with conversations that stretched late into the night. Marcus, ever the charmer, found a way to make Lila laugh, to momentarily lift her spirits from the daily struggles of her new reality. What began as innocent companionship gradually shifted, blurring the lines between friendship and something far more intimate. As months turned into years, the nature of these visits transformed. The loneliness and vulnerability that Lila felt in Jamal's absence created a chasm that Marcus willingly filled. Their relationship, hidden under the guise of friendship and support, soon escalated into a full-blown affair. Marcus, adept at leading a double life, managed this secret with a calculated precision, ensuring their meetings were discreet, their conversations never hinting at the depth of their involvement. Meanwhile, Jamal, oblivious to the ongoing betrayal, continued to focus on his demanding job, convinced that Marcus's presence was a blessing, a relief from the guilt he often felt for leaving Lila alone. His trust in Marcus was complete, his gratitude deep for what he believed was selfless support of his wife. This trust and the fragmented time Jamal spent at home created the perfect storm, allowing the affair to not only start but to flourish under his very nose. The affair between Lila and Marcus carried on with a quiet intensity. With each passing year, the stakes grew higher, the connection deeper, and the lies more elaborate. Marcus, caught in the thrill of the forbidden, found himself entangled in his own web of deceit. Lila, for her part, wrestled with guilt and longing, torn between her loyalty to Jamal and her feelings for Marcus. This emotional turmoil was a heavy burden, shadowing every moment of joy they snatched from their secret liaisons. Suspicion first crept into Jamal's mind, not through any obvious clues left behind by Lila or Marcus, but through subtle changes in Lila's demeanor. She, who had always been an open book to Jamal, began to hold back, her smiles tinged with a sadness he couldn't place, her laughter not quite reaching her eyes. On the few occasions when Jamal managed to come home unexpectedly, he noticed how her tone changed when speaking to Marcus on the phone, how quickly she would end the call. These small, unsettling changes planted seeds of doubt in Jamal's heart, yet he brushed them aside, attributing them to the stress of her condition and his absence. The real turning point came on a crisp autumn evening when Jamal returned home to surprise Layla for their anniversary. As he quietly entered the house, expecting to catch Layla off guard with a bouquet of her favorite flowers, he was instead met with a silence that was profound and revealing. It was in this silence that he stumbled upon a gift, a simple yet elegant necklace, not given by him, hidden away in a drawer. The accompanying card bore no name, but the intimate tone of the message was unmistakable. This discovery was the catalyst for Jamal, who could no longer ignore the gnawing suspicion that had taken root in his mind. His world, once defined by his career and his love for Leela, was now overshadowed by the looming specter of betrayal. As we delve deeper into this saga, we witness how a bond built on years of trust and friendship began to unravel, leading to choices that would alter the course of their lives forever. In a tragic twist of fate, the vibrant life Lila and Jamal had known came crashing down one evening. 10 years into their marriage, Lila was returning from a school event when a reckless driver, intoxicated and veering wildly, collided head-on with her car. The impact was catastrophic. Lila sustained severe injuries that altered the course of her life permanently. Her spine was severely damaged, and the trauma to her head resulted in a loss of vision. The aftermath of the accident confined her to a wheelchair, dependent on others for the most basic tasks, a stark contrast to her formerly independent and active lifestyle. This calamity not only reshaped Leela's physical world, but also deeply affected the emotional landscape of their marriage. Jamal, witnessing the agonizing challenges faced by his wife, made a life-altering decision. He resigned from his position at the police department, a career that had been both his passion and identity, to care for Leela full-time. His new role as a caregiver was filled with both love and a quiet mourning for the life they once shared, a life now lost to the shadows of Lila's disabilities. Amidst this profound adjustment, Jamal's trust in his wife and his best friend remained steadfast, a trust that was soon to be shattered. One evening, while Lila slept, her phone buzzed with a message that would change everything. Jamal, who had taken to managing Lila's appointments and social connections due to her visual impairment, picked up the phone to check the notification. The message was from Marcus, but its content was shockingly personal, a stark departure from the mundane exchanges typical of colleagues or even close friends. The words on the screen hinted at memories and intimate moments shared, a tone too familiar, too tender for a platonic relationship. The discovery of this message led Jamal down a path of retrospection and doubt. Memories of past interactions, once innocent, now seemed fraught with hidden meanings. His mind raced with suspicion and the betrayal by those he loved most. Driven by a need for the truth, Jamal turned to science, hoping that a DNA test would dispel his doubts. He secretly obtained samples from their 2 children, who had always been his pride and joy, and sent them off for analysis. The wait for the results, a period of agonizing suspense. When the results finally arrived, the truth was as clear as it was devastating. The children Jamal had loved and raised, the children he believed were his own flesh and blood, were not his biological offspring. The DNA conclusively showed that Marcus, the man he had considered a brother, was their father. This revelation tore through Jamal's world like a storm, leaving him reeling from the magnitude of deception he had been subjected to. The betrayal was not just a wound to his heart, it was an existential upheaval, questioning the very foundations of his identity as a husband and a father. As Jamal faced this stark reality, his emotions transformed from shock to a deep, seething rage. The life he had built, the sacrifices he had made, and the trust he had placed in his wife and best friend, all were betrayed. In the wake of this discovery, the narrative takes a dark turn, leading Jamal down a path driven by a primal desire for retribution. This was not merely a quest for justice, it was an odyssey into the darkest corners of a wounded soul, seeking to reclaim a sense of control in a world that had spun wildly out of his grasp. The fallout from the DNA test was immediate and devastating. Jamal, a man who had dedicated his life to upholding the law, found himself confronting a personal crisis that blurred the lines between justice and vengeance. The confirmation that his children were not biologically his own shattered his world, sending him into a spiral of despair and rage. His trust, once given so freely and completely, was now broken, leaving him to grapple with a sense of betrayal so profound that it consumed his every thought. In the days following the revelation, Jamal's demeanor changed drastically. Gone was the composed detective renowned for his rational thinking and calm under pressure. In its place was a man driven by raw emotions, his actions fueled by a deep-seated desire for retribution. The betrayal by Marcus, compounded by Lila's involvement, gnawed at his psyche, pushing him toward a dark path he had never imagined he would tread. As Jamal's emotional turmoil deepened, he meticulously began to plan an act of revenge that was both chilling and final. His skills as a detective, once used to solve crimes, were now repurposed to commit one. He knew that to avoid suspicion, every detail of his plan had to be flawless. Jamal chose a night when the moon was just a sliver in the sky, casting minimal light over his grim tasks. He waited until Lila, heavily medicated to ease her chronic pain, was in a deep sleep, unaware of the horrific fate that awaited her. With a precision that was both terrifying and pitiable, Jamal carried out the dismemberment. He chose the tool with care, a saw from his own garage, one that he had used for mundane household repairs, now repurposed for a gruesome act. The act was methodical, a grim testament to the depth of his betrayal-fueled rage. Every cut was a release of the years of love, trust, and dreams that had been mercilessly stolen from him. Once the deed was done, Jamal transported the remains to an isolated farm area known only to a few locals as a place seldom visited. He chose a spot under an old oak tree, its branches gnarled and wide as if reaching out to the heavens for solace. Here, he buried the remains of the woman he had once loved, the earth muffling the dark secrets of his vengeance. His actions were methodical, each step carried out with a chilling calmness that belied the storm of emotions raging within him. Please kindly subscribe for more true crime stories. Unbeknownst to Jamal, his actions were not entirely unseen. A local farmer, accustomed to the late hours needed for tending his fields, noticed unusual activity near the oak tree. From a distance, he observed Jamal's solitary figure, but chose to remain silent, dismissing it as a trespasser, perhaps unaware of the property lines. It was only later, when local authorities began a search for Lila, who had been reported missing, that the farmer's memory of that night would come back to haunt him. This brutal act marked a point of no return for Jamal. The man who had once stood as a pillar of justice had now fallen into an abyss of moral darkness. His professional instincts had told him that the truth was essential, no matter how painful. But the personal cost of this truth was a price he continued to pay, each moment, with heavy remorse. As the community grappled with Lila's disappearance, the investigation into her whereabouts intensified, with local law enforcement pulling together resources to uncover any leads. At the center of this search was Detective Andrea Mitchell, a seasoned investigator known for her meticulous approach and her ability to unravel complex cases. Unaware of Jamal's deep involvement, she spearheaded the efforts, canvassing the area, interviewing friends and family, and painstakingly piecing together Lila's last known movements. Amidst the flurry of police activity, a seemingly insignificant piece of the puzzle lingered at the edge of the investigation: the observations of an old farmer, Thomas Eldridge. Thomas, a lifelong resident of the area near where Jamal had buried the remains, had witnessed an unusual late-night activity. Initially, he had dismissed the sighting as benign, attributing it to a possible hunter or a lost traveler. But as news of Lila's disappearance spread, a nagging sense of duty compelled him to come forward. Thomas approached Detective Mitchell with his account, detailing the strange behavior he had observed near his property. He described seeing a lone figure, burdened with what appeared to be heavy bags, moving under the cover of darkness. While he could not clearly see the person's face, the description of the location and the time coincided eerily with Lila's disappearance. With Thomas's tip as a new lead, Detective Mitchell redirected the investigation towards the area described. The police conducted a thorough search of the vicinity, with dogs trained to detect human scent. The tension mounted as the search team moved closer to the old oak tree, the suspense palpable among the officers and volunteers. However, the path to uncovering the truth was riddled with complications. Initial digs around the area revealed nothing, leading to frustrating dead ends and mounting pressure. Detective Mitchell, persistent in her efforts, expanded the search perimeter, refusing to let the case go cold. Her tenacity paid off when one of the dogs signaled strongly near the base of the oak tree, its behavior becoming increasingly agitated. Excavation teams moved in with a quiet urgency, the air thick with apprehension. As the earth was carefully removed, the grim reality of what lay hidden beneath became apparent. The discovery of Lila's remains was a shocking conclusion to her disappearance, sending ripples of horror through the community and the police force. The investigation then took on a new dimension as forensic experts were called to examine the site. The meticulous process of gathering evidence was painstaking, with each piece of soil, each disturbed root examined for clues that could lead to the perpetrator. As the forensic evidence began to compile, it pointed inexorably back to Jamal, whose world began to unravel swiftly. Detective Mitchell, faced with the overwhelming evidence of Jamal's involvement, had to reconcile the respected detective he once was with the evidence of the heinous act he had committed. The case, which had started as a missing persons investigation, had morphed into a harrowing narrative of betrayal, murder, and a fall from grace. The suspense did not end with the discovery of the body. Jamal's arrest and subsequent interrogation were fraught with emotional intensity. He presented a figure torn by his actions, his confession a mixture of remorse and defiance. He spoke of the betrayal that had led him to this point, his voice breaking as he recounted the pain of discovering the truth about his wife and best friend. As the case drew to a close, with Jamal facing the consequences of his actions, the community and the police force grappled with the implications of the tragedy. Detective Mitchell reflected on the case, her thoughts heavy with the burden of the truths she had uncovered. The investigation had revealed more than just the details of a crime. It had exposed the deep vulnerabilities and destructive potential within those sworn to protect and serve. As the evidence mounted and the truth unfolded, Jamal Richardson found himself not in the role of a detective, but as the prime suspect in a chilling murder investigation. The walls of the interrogation room at the police station felt colder and more confining than ever as Jamal prepared to face the consequences of his actions. Detective Andrea Mitchell, who had pieced together the grim puzzle of Lila's disappearance and murder, was the one to conduct the interrogation, a task she approached with a heavy heart, given Jamal's former standing in the department. The confrontation that ensued was as intense as it was tragic. Detective Mitchell laid out the evidence methodically. The DNA results, the eyewitness account from Thomas Eldridge, the forensic data collected from the burial site. With each piece of evidence, she watched Jamal closely, gauging his reactions. Jamal sat across from her, his posture rigid, his eyes a mixture of defiance and resignation. The room was thick with tension, each officer outside the interrogation glass holding a collective breath. Jamal's voice broke the heavy silence, his words slow but filled with a tumultuous mix of emotions. He confessed to the murder of his wife Lila, detailing his motives rooted deeply in betrayal and heartbreak. Yet as he spoke, a surprising twist began to unfold. Jamal claimed that Marcus, his best friend and the architect of his ruin, had manipulated not just Lila, but him as well. He spun a tale of deep psychological games played by Marcus, suggesting that Marcus had intended to destroy Jamal's life from within, motivated by jealousy and a twisted sense of rivalry. Detective Mitchell, trained to detect lies and half-truths, listened intently, her skepticism growing. The evidence against Jamal was overwhelming, yet his last-ditch effort to implicate Marcus introduced a sliver of doubt. Could there have been more to the story than just a straightforward act of revenge? Was Jamal merely a pawn in a larger, more sinister game? The interrogation room, once a place of clarity and resolution, now seemed to cloud over with uncertainty. Detective Mitchell decided to confront Marcus with these new accusations, setting the stage for another dramatic encounter. Marcus, brought in for questioning, faced Jamal across the cold metallic table. The exchange was fraught with accusations, denials, and revelations, each man trying to outmaneuver the other, revealing a complex web of deceit that extended far beyond what the police had initially uncovered. As the clock ticked down, Detective Mitchell faced a critical decision. The case she thought was closed was now blown wide open with possibilities of deeper conspiracies. Should she charge Jamal with the murder based solely on the evidence at hand? Or should she delve deeper into Marcus's potential involvement, possibly uncovering a larger plot? In a story where the boundaries between justice and revenge blur into indistinguishable shades of gray, the theme of betrayal serves as a poignant undercurrent, impacting each character deeply and differently. Jamal, once a paragon of law and integrity, found his world upended, not just by the unfaithfulness of his wife, but also by the deceit of his closest friend. His journey from a committed detective to a vengeful murderer underscores how betrayal can transform a person's core, leading them to actions they never thought possible. For Lila, the betrayal was twofold. Initially, she betrayed her husband, driven by loneliness and despair. Then she herself was betrayed by Jamal's horrific response. Her actions, although deeply flawed, stem from human vulnerability, challenging the viewer to question the nature of accountability and victimhood. Marcus, whose motivations are tainted by envy and rivalry, manipulates those closest to him, betraying not just Jamal but the ethical duties of his badge. His betrayal raises questions about the roots of malevolence in personal relationships and the destructive power of hidden agendas. As we reflect on the crime and its aftermath, the emotional and psychological scars borne by each character reveal the complex interplay between personal ethics and moral justice. Jamal's ultimate decision to commit murder as a form of retribution forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the limits of human forgiveness and the cost of vengeance. Is justice truly served when it is exacted by a hand clouded by personal grief and anger? The ethical dilemmas presented in this tale linger in the mind long after the facts have been laid bare. As viewers, we are compelled to consider whether Jamal's actions can ever be justified, or if his descent into darkness was a path he could have avoided. We ponder the role of the law in situations where the heart rules over the head, and we question how society should respond to those who take justice into their own hands. This story leaves us with a contemplation of justice and revenge, challenging us to consider how closely the two can intertwine, and at what point one becomes indistinguishable from the other. It prompts a deeper examination of betrayal, not just as an act, but as a catalyst that inexorably changes lives, leaving us to wonder whether any form of retribution can truly repair the broken bonds of trust. Please kindly subscribe for more true crime stories.